Well, this Easter, it will be 25 years since the Belfast Agreement. There are rumours that US President Joe Biden is planning to visit Northern Ireland to mark the occasion. However, the major issue that could keep the VIPs away is the division between the EU and the UK over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Just to remind viewers and listeners, the Northern Ireland Protocol was brought in by the EU and the UK to protect the single market of the EU and the Belfast Agreement. It certainly protected the EU single market by checking goods coming from GB into Northern Ireland with total disregard for the UK single market. But instead of protecting the Belfast Agreement, the Northern Ireland Protocol has brought down devolution in Northern Ireland and ruptured relations both north-south and east-west. Rishi Sunak has promised the US President that a deal will be reached with the EU by the time of the anniversary. And this week, Foreign Secretary James Cleverly met European Commission Vice President Maros Sefcovic. Political expectation about a resolution has grown. But is that the reality? I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Sir Jeffery Donaldson. He's the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, and he joins me now to discuss the prospects of a deal on the Northern Ireland Protocol and whether it will happen before the anniversary of the Belfast Agreement in April. Jeffrey, delighted that you could join me. Accepted wisdom seems to be that we're on a cusp of a deal. Is that correct?
I'm not sure that it is, Arlene, and good morning and greetings from your native Northern Ireland. I think that there's been a lot of talk about improvements in the mood music, but any of the conversations I've had with senior government ministers suggest that there's still quite a gap to close on some very significant issues related to the Northern Ireland Protocol before an agreement can be reached. So I'm not so sure that we're on the cusp of an agreement, but it could be that in the next 2 to 3 weeks, progress will be made on those major issues, but that remains to be seen.
So I was reading David Frost, who writes for The Telegraph, as you know, every Friday, and he was saying in this week's column that the government has paused the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill in Parliament. There's no more talk of triggering Article 16. So they appear to have put all of their eggs into the basket of negotiation without leverage. Is that how you would see what's going on at the moment?
Well, I certainly think that the protocol bill gave the government significant leverage, as does, in fact, the approaching anniversary of the Belfast Agreement, as you pointed out, Good Friday 1998, 25 years on, and here we are. None of the political institutions established under that agreement are functioning properly, and that's down to the harm caused to the Northern Ireland economy and to political stability in Northern Ireland without a single unionist supporting the protocol elected to the Assembly in the elections last year in May. There is not a sustainable basis at the moment for the cross-community support required to re-establish, restore those political institutions. So the government has that leverage, but it is, I think, regrettable that they've been unable to proceed with the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. And I've said to the Prime Minister that in the event that that agreement is not reached with the EU, then he needs to press on, and the government need to make good the commitments they have given to the people of Northern Ireland to resolve this issue.
It's funny you should mention those commitments, because I was reading somewhere today that the Conservative manifesto of the last election said that our laws will be made in London, Edinburgh, Cardiff and Belfast, and interpreted by judges across the UK, not in Luxembourg. It appears that the whole issue of oversight by the European Court of Justice has come back into the frame again. Do you think it would be acceptable to have the European Court of Justice looking at how laws are interpreted in Northern Ireland?
Well, of course, Arlene, it's not just a matter of who interprets those laws, it's a question of who makes those laws. And Northern Ireland is currently subject to EU law across a whole range of lawmaking here. That means that we are increasingly diverging from the rest of the United Kingdom on how we trade and on many other important issues. And all of that adds to the barriers to trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And as you rightly pointed out in your introduction, the protocol was supposedly designed to protect the integrity of the UK's internal market as well as the single market of the EU. Patently, it has failed absolutely failed to protect the UK's internal market. And that's why the UK government does need to introduce legislation to ensure that Northern Ireland businesses can trade freely within the United Kingdom, and that Northern Ireland consumers can receive goods sold by UK companies across all of the UK. So you're right, the ECJ is an issue, but fundamental to all of this is the question of who regulates the way that we trade within the United Kingdom. Who is responsible for making the laws that govern a wide range of issues of legislation? And we are very clear that when it comes to trade within the United Kingdom, it's the UK Parliament and government that should regulate how we trade. And then, of course, we're happy to look at how we protect the integrity of the EU's single market with practical measures that don't breach the integrity of the United Kingdom.
Finally, Sir Jeffery, I'm going to be talking later on about burnout and pressure on our politicians and leaders. Do you feel a sense of pressure at this point in time on you?
Well, of course, Arlene, you've been in my shoes, and you know, in leadership, pressure is always there. But I am very clear that we need to get this right. And therefore, I would say to the UK government and to the Prime Minister, don't go for a half-baked deal. Don't go for some kind of interim arrangement. Let's get this done, and done properly. Because if we're to restore the political institutions in Northern Ireland, if we're to be able to move Northern Ireland forward with cross-community support, then we need an agreement that unionists as well as nationalists can support. And that means dealing with the very difficult and challenging issues. But that's what leadership is about. So I think the pressure is on the UK government to get a deal done, but I want to see them get the right deal for Northern Ireland and for the whole of the UK.